So maybe one of the biggest complaints that I've ever had with State of Decay 2, I think is about to be solved in this next update. And I gotta say, guys, if they can pull this off, this will be one of the coolest and one of those major updates that can really change the game in a big way. So they recently released update 36 at the time of this video, launched not long ago, and it was about the quality of life changes. But update 37 brings a big mechanic change that's just not any change, but one of the biggest core changes to this game that I've seen since I started covering. And that is they are about to change how the zombie spawns work. And get this, it's going to be more realistic. And let me explain what that means and how that looks. But I do want to mention, guys, that this game is a test bed for State of Decay 3. And you better believe that realistic zombie spawns will be in the next game. You're going to see what I mean in a minute. So let me explain now what the team over at Wushu is cooking with this update. So in a recent Undead Labs livestream, the team behind the current updates talked about what they hope to achieve with the next update. And they want to rework how zombies spawn. So it actually makes it feel like there is more zombies in the world in the appropriate places. Think about like Trumbull Valley and going down south into the city where Marshall is. There you would have like an insane amount of zombies, and that makes total sense because there is tons of buildings pretty much all near each other, and there's businesses and there's all sorts of things happening. Wushu also mentioned that maybe if you go into the remote areas, maybe the farmland areas, that it wouldn't be as crazy overrun with zombies left and right. And I am kind of paraphrasing what they said. Another thing they talked about is when you guys actually see like a screamer scream, zombies kind of like seemingly spawn out of nowhere, or when zombies kind of do that little war cry where they're like doing all that like ridiculous thing. Again, more zombies kind of spawn out of nowhere. Well, they kind of mentioned that they're hoping to eliminate that and make sure that those incidents actually spawn maybe the zombies that are actually in the vicinity and not just completely out of thin air. Now, there is major implications for this because you can really plan this out. You can stay away from major dense city parts. So like I mentioned, think of Trumbull Valley down in Marshall, or actually maybe Spencer's Mill. So you can really map out the areas that won't have a lot of threats. And that's kind of how you would really do it, like in a real zombie apocalypse, right? And I appreciate that because in the stream, they mentioned the word simulation a lot. They were saying if this was kind of like a real zombie apocalypse, it does make sense that in remote areas, it just wouldn't be jam-packed with zombies everywhere. Now, I know for me as a lethal player, it would make looting in certain places like a little bit more calculated. So for instance, there'd be like these low risk and relatively low reward areas because you don't have like a ton of buildings everywhere and there won't be a lot of loot, but at least I know I could be safe going in those areas. But maybe then I could decide to do a high risk, high reward, and I'm thinking I want some guns. I could go into the gun store over there in Spencer's Mill, and that could be, you know, super dangerous and super insane because it would be infested with Zeds everywhere. And all of that really does fit into how the whole world would play out. Now, another interesting aspect about this update, I wanted to do a little bit of, I don't know what you want to call it, maybe some journalism or something. I decided to ask a current State of Decay 3 developer about this update, you know, those guys who used to work on this game before Wushu, and I wondered, is this something they've always wanted to do? I thought he said some really interesting things. Take a listen to this.
So Sunny Games asks, how do you feel about what was mentioned about new spawn mechanics at the Update 36 live stream? Is that something you guys at Undead Labs always hoped it would be, but are now only getting to it, as in more realistic spawn? In the wake of Update 36, Wushu is going to be releasing a new update to the public test realm where they're trying out some new zombie spawning mechanics. And Sunday Games is asking, you know, how we feel about that. Like, is that something that we've always wanted to do and it's just Wushu just barely got the time to do it? Or is it controversial to us? I don't think you're really asking that, but whatever. No, this is something we have always wanted to do for a long time. We've been sort of thinking of the zombie spawning mechanics in State of Decay 2 as being, you know, adequate for what the game was trying to do, but it's got a lot of sort of rough edges and problems that in a future game we would definitely want to fix. And so seeing Wushu sort of try a new iteration of it in State of Decay 2, it's not just an improvement to State of Decay 2, it's also going to be a learning experience for us. Try to figure out, you know, how these things can be made better. Because, you know, I think some of the problems people run into is, you know, I feel like I've cleared out a space and suddenly there's a zombie there. And it's one of those things where, you know, even in a zombie TV show, when the characters have a legitimate reason to feel like they have successfully cleaned out a place, and then there's suddenly a zombie that jumps out and murders one of them. That even feels cheap in a TV show where you don't expect to have control over what goes on. You know, you're not a, it's not like you're a player in a video game who you actually expect things to go according to your plan. In a TV show, you expect surprises, but even then, it sometimes feels really cheap. And so having it happen to you in a video game, you know, can feel especially cheap. And so that's one complaint people have. Another complaint that I often have is there's just nowhere I can go that isn't full of zombies, because the way that, you know, because we don't actually track individual zombies long term, except for like freaks and hordes. We're constantly despawning and respawning all the zombies around you, which, you know, it's a technical necessity. It means that if we're not careful, it's very easy to just make it feel like, well, just zombies are everywhere. No matter where you go, the game just keeps on spawning zombies randomly. And it can feel like not only that, you know, you're never able to clear a place out, but also it just feels like you can't catch a break. Like you're trying to escape from a terrible situation, but there's nowhere to go because every other location also has a terrible situation in it. And that's not kind of what you expect. You want there to be emergencies, but you also want there to be breaks from emergencies. You want there to be sort of the excitement of the game to be going up and down, not for it to just be constantly high until you die. That's just not very fun. So we've been wanting to make improvements like this for a long time. I love that Wushu's taking advantage of the public test realm to test some new ideas in this area, and I'll be closely watching what they do, because I would love to, you know, to see if we can, any successes that they have will be very informative for the game that we're working on. Not that that's my area. I'm not in charge of zombie spawning. That's somebody else's area, but, you know, I get to have opinions. Hope that answers your question, Sonny.
But guys, that wasn't actually all the information. We actually are set to see huge developments with the curveball mechanic. Now guys, before you leave this video, don't leave just yet, because I know some of you love or hate this mechanic. Trust me guys, this is about to get pretty juicy, as I have done a lot of testing on these new curveball elements. And let's just start from the beginning, which is now an updated UI that gives you complete and utter control of the curveballs. And you can now fully modify these curveballs to be really intense and insane and give you nothing but positive good stuff. Or you can make your game way hard and turn on all the negative curveballs and increase the intensity and just make your game hell right there. You can probably guess which I did. But you can actually also do the opposite too and keep the curveballs on, but maybe barely see them every once in a while, or just completely turn it off. Let's go ahead and break all this down. Now for starters, the new menu has this enable customization button, and you simply turn that on, and now you can just kind of mess with this. The top of the menu has the frequency. Now the regular keeps it pretty much normal where it's at right now. The continual just kind of beams constant curveballs, and it's true guys, it just keeps on coming for the most part. And we'll talk more about that later, as I have tons of examples to show you guys. And of course, if you put this at the never setting, it completely turns them off. So now you have another transparent way to turn off curveballs, which is great. Now keep that menu in mind. Now going further a little bit down, we have balance, and this is the fun one. Now you can change the types of curveballs that you want. You can go ahead and putting it only on negative, and you're gonna get nothing but chaos, and that's mostly how I played. And of course, I'll show you guys that in a second. Then you can put this on nothing but positive, and if you never want a negative curveball, you're only gonna get nothing but positive if that's what you want. Then you kind of have the more in-between settings. Now, the more negative gives you simply just a bigger ratio of seeing negative curveballs, and more positive is the same thing. You'll still see a variety of positive and negative, but if you choose one of those options, you'll have one or more of the other depending on what you choose. And finally, we have the impact, which is, according to the UI, it says it adjusts the intensity of the curveballs. And they have the positive and negative completely separated in the UI. If you have them both active, you can then adjust the difficulty of the positive effects of each. So positive curveballs will increase their bonus, guys. So that's kind of how that would work. And negative curveballs will get even harder if you turn up these sliders all the way. And as you guys can see, you guys have full and utter control. And what I tested with all this was insane. Like, it was so nuts. Now, first, you guys know me. When I do my testing, I kind of go for the extremes. And I did that for the positive and the negative curveballs. And stay tuned for the negative curveballs, because that was just hilarious. But I did start with the positive frequency turned up all the way. I went ahead and the impact I turned to very strong. And the very first positive curveball I got was the bullet benefactor. And this curveball is the one that drops like a crate of loot. And then you get this huge area, and if you look here on the map, because I had that setting all the way turned to very strong, that little curveball setting in the menu, by putting it at that very strong, I got this really big radius, way bigger than normal. And in these circles, the zombies may drop ammo, and so I had a higher chance to find grenades as well. And I ended up going on a really nice little looting run, taking out Zeds left and right. But since I turned on frequency really high, I also got the up and Atom positive curveball within like a minute or two of getting the bullet benefactor. And I thought this was really amazing. I got this little stamina bonus and a higher community morale and improved firearm handling. And then the stamina bonus really came in clutch when I was farming for the bullet benefactor. And this is how this whole new curveball menu can look and play out if you like choose all the positives, and all the positives can even stack on each other. So it's really neat. And so then maybe you start to like meta think on how you can take advantage of this. If you want to farm up certain items, you want to take advantage of all this cool stuff, you can absolutely do that. Now, again, the cool thing about this game is it is a sandbox. You can play this game in any way you want, and you can have fun in any way that looks to you. No one here is judging you if you want to do nothing but positive and just have a blast. But guys, you know me, right? If you've been following me on this channel for a while, you guys know I'm not a normal dude, and I love pain. So like that was all my testing with positive, because I was too eager to go ahead and put this menu on the negative curveballs to the very max with very strong intensity. And my goodness, it got so fun. My first one was Strange Mutations, my first negative curveball. Simply put, zombies are headless, which means you don't really kill them if you take off their head, which is terrible. They also deal higher damage. And trust me, it got more fun than since quickly after that, I turned up the frequency. I had it turned up and I got the Gargantua Mutation. This is juggernauts who stink and they drain stamina and have better eyesight and a better sense of smell. And right with that, I ended up getting a huge fight that ensued with me against 4 ferals and a jug, and I was close to almost death. And let me tell you guys, killing Zeds was almost pointless due to that ridiculous headless mechanic. Then after that, I got another negative curveball, which is the thick skin, which makes zombies resistant to melee and fire. And if you look at the map, guys, my entire game was covered in some form of a negative curveball. And that is again because of how I put that intensity slider all the way up so strong that it made the whole thing very dicey, and it covered my entire map with just negative goodness. But of course, I just felt like I needed even more fun. So I went ahead and I tested the mother of all negative curveballs, the Mother Queen Black Plague Heart. And with the intensity turned up all the way up, man, my goodness, this is not for the faint of heart. I decided to come in packing with tons of C4, plague cures, literally ready to throw the freaking kitchen sink at this bad boy. And trust me, I needed every single ounce of everything, because upon getting to the area, of course, my car ran out of fuel almost right away entering the Black Plague Heart territory. I mean, look at how fast the gas just drained from my car. Now, due to the Zeds also being strong from the other negative curveballs, I decided to use Scent Block, which actually hides me from the Z's. But the thing I realized immediately though is how fast my health was draining. I mean, just look at that. Imagine if I didn't have Scent Block and I had to fight my way through essentially all of that. You're like almost on a timer with how fast your health is draining, and basically how much painkillers are in your inventory and health related items with you. Now, if you watched my last video on update 36, I also fought a Black Plague Heart there, and my health was draining fast, but not this fast. This was much harder. Keep in mind, zombies are also stronger in the Black Plague zone. So at this point now, I'm just dropping C4 and C4 and more C4, and this thing isn't even hitting stage 1. I think I dropped maybe like, I don't know how many, maybe my editor can count how many I exploded, but it felt like I dropped more than 20 and it still didn't go down. But finally it did get its first stage down. Now again, I am completely dying every single second, so I am popping pills like it's going out of style. I needed my fix every 30 seconds. Meanwhile, I'm dodging ferals left and right every which way, and I decided this is ridiculous. I decided to cheese it only because I was running out of health items and I was just dying so quick. I found like a little spot where I couldn't be attacked by the Z's, and I just used melee over and over, and sure enough, this thing I think was weak to melee attacks, and I was able to hit the stages pretty quickly, and I ended up killing it not too long after I kind of found this little exploit in the garage. And I think the thing that I took away from all these negative curveballs is that it can absolutely make your game hell if you want to do that. Getting that headless curveball was one of the worst because it didn't leave my game for hours, or at least it felt like it took forever, and I just couldn't kill any Zeds very well, and they were all very strong and dangerous. Now, with all my testing, there was like some bugs, and this is the PTR, and we're actually testing all this for update 37. I kind of felt like the frequency slider, it felt a little off. Sometimes I would get curveballs literally within minutes of each other and stacking, and then other times it kind of took a long time, and I always had the frequency turned up all the way. But ultimately though, you can really customize this whole thing to your liking and really set this in quite a few unique ways, where maybe mostly you get positive with the intensity turned up, but maybe you want to set it to where you get a few negative curveballs here and there. And at the end, guys, I really felt like this just made my game more fun, even just having the positive curveballs. So overall, I feel like this is a great change to the game, and update 37 is really looking and shaping to be a good one. And I do want to mention, I don't think this is it for update 37. I think there's a lot more, and there'll be a lot more for me to cover. And the curveball changes I think are really neat and really great, but the changes that I think I'm most interested so far that I've heard the other day was the zombie spawns, and how that's going to make, I really feel, a great impact on how this game functions, and it could truly be a game changer. And the fact that Undead Labs might be looking to implement their own realistic zombie spawns in State of Decay 3 just kind of like further proves that the next game might just be like the most ultimate zombie game we've ever seen, which is why you need to see the next video on my new channel where I talk about, I think we're about to get an announcement soon. So make sure you guys check out that video because I think we're about to hear about State of Decay 3 super soon.